Welcome to the hidden corners where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind.
Welcome to the Wolfman Chronicles. This is Chapter 2 of Book 9, Episode 104. India, the Tiger King. The Sundarbans pressed in around them, a world of mangroves and mist, where roots twisted like the bones of the earth and water shifted beneath every step. Jack carried the remaining honey in a small cracked clay pot, his hands steady though the weight of the ritual bore down on him. Sasha walked close behind, scanning the jungle with the sharpness of someone who trusted neither spirits nor men. While Dara murmured the prayers she'd learned as a child, her voice quiet but firm. They stopped at another small shrine, a little more than a cluster of stones draped in faded cloth and marigold garlands. Dara lit incense from the end of a stick, its smoke curling into the wet air. Jack bent down, pouring a dollop of honey before the effigy of Bon Bibi, the forest mother. "If we're supposed to leave an offering of honey at every shrine we come across," Jack whispered, "we're going to be out of honey before we make it to the river." Jack, he respected the locals' beliefs. After all, he'd seen enough to know that not every story was superstition. But what gnawed at him was the human hand behind the terror. Dakon Ray, tiger by night, supposedly a man by day, had been taking children from their homes, from their yards, from their villages. But Jack's instincts told him this was no phantom. Someone was using the legend to terrorize the locals. Dara's eyes didn't leave the tree line. "We know he's not doing it alone. Traffickers always move in packs. There's a system. Runners, handlers, transporters. You don't operate in a place like this without a network." Dara had been a rescuer for a lot longer than Jack and Sasha. She knew the game. She knew the lies predators told, the masks they wore, and the way fear could be sharpened into a weapon. In the Sundarbans, it wasn't guns or chains that kept the villagers silent. It was belief. Belief in the Tiger King. Belief that if you spoke against him, the forest itself would turn on you. She had seen it before in Cambodia, in Myanmar, in Thailand. Traffickers didn't just hide behind bribes and violence. They hid behind ghosts. A whispered name, the half-seen shadow, a cursed shrine at the edge of a rice field. Fear was cheaper than bullets and more effective than a locked door. And here, deep in the tangle of mangroves, Dakon Rai was more than a story. He was a living terror. They pushed deeper into the forest, moving along narrow paths known only to those who made their living in this wild and dangerous land. Dara guided them, every turn of her head listening for the cries of birds, the shift of the river. And tigers weren't the only dangerous creature in the mangroves. The Sundarbans crawled with life that could kill you without warning. Saltwater crocodiles lay camouflaged in the murky water, their eyes breaking the surface like knuckles. Venomous snakes draped themselves from low branches, silent, patient, deadly. Even the mud hid dangers, sharp roots that poked up out of the mud and could easily impale someone who tripped, and quicksand pockets that could swallow a man in seconds. Dara knew them all. She'd memorized case reports of rescuers who had vanished out here, bodies never found. Some chalked it up to the tiger. Others whispered about Dakon Rai. Dara knew better. This forest didn't need legends to explain the missing. It simply ate the careless. Dara's grip tightened on her machete. Stay close. Tigers are gods here. But crocs, she lowered her voice, eyes scanning the black water. Crocs are very real demons. The air thickened with silence. Every insect droned suddenly louder, every rustle magnified. Danger was everywhere, and one wrong step could mean that they wouldn't make it out alive. This is his domain, Dara finally said, her voice hushed. The locals, they say the Tiger King keeps his den across the water. There is an island, a forbidden place. No one dares go there. Jack adjusted his pack. And that's where we're going, right? They poled across the river in a narrow skiff, the water thick and sluggish, crocodiles sliding silently beneath the surface. The mangroves loomed, their roots clawing upward like skeletal hands. Jack kept his eyes scanning, ears attuned. It wasn't just the tigers and the snakes he was worried about. The crocodiles were just a little too close for comfort. Now he knew traffickers thrived on fear, and the jungle offered plenty of that. As they neared the island, a shape came into focus. An old watchtower, long abandoned, rising crooked against the skyline. Its stone base was half swallowed by vines, but Jack could see it had been repurposed. Nets hung drying against the wall, and a fire pit smoldered at the base. Yeah, it looks like this might be one of their hangouts, Jack whispered. The three moved in under the cover of the mangroves, slipping ashore without a sound. Dara pointed out the sentries, two men with rifles leaning lazily against the fence. But their eyes roamed. They were watching for tigers, not rescuers. Jack crouched low. Three on the ground, another in the tower. They're organized, but they're not expecting company. Good, Sasha said. Then let's give them a surprise. They waited until the wind shifted, carrying the sound of the jungle to mask their movements. Jack moved first, a shadow slipping from one tree to another. Sasha mirrored him on the opposite flank. Dara stayed back, her hand tight on the hilt of her blade. Her role was to guide, not to fight. But Jack knew that she'd strike if she had to. The first guard never saw him coming. Jack swept low, knocking the rifle aside and dropping the man with a quick chokehold. He lowered him slightly to the dirt. Across the clearing, Sasha did the same, her knife pressed to the other man's throat before he had time to gasp. Only the tower guard remained. Jack signaled Sasha, 2 fingers, then a sharp motion upwards. She nodded, and together they crept forward, silent as the tide. The guard in the tower yawned, rifle across his lap. Jack climbed the rear stairs of the structure, every muscle coiled. He reached the very top in seconds, launching forward, slamming the man's head into the railing before he could even cry out. The body slumped. The camp was theirs, for now. Inside the old watchtower, they found out just what they were expecting. In a makeshift bamboo cage, several young boys and girls sat on the floor, a scared look in their eyes. Dara hurried to the children. They shrank back at first, fear wide in their eyes. Jack crouched low, hands raised in peace. "It's okay," Dara said softly in Bengali. "We're here to take you home." One of the older boys whispered, "He'll come back. The Tiger King will come back." Jack's chest tightened. Whoever this Dakan Rai was, he'd carved terror deep into these kids. A trafficker could only maintain control if fear kept the locals compliant. Man by day, tiger by night, a mask, a story, a shadow that kept people from looking too close. But Dara's eyes met Jack's, and he knew that she was thinking the same thing that he was. This wasn't just one man. This was bigger. "Jack," Dara said quietly, scanning the tree line again. "This isn't the den. This is just a holding place. He'll be back for them, which means... Jack stood slowly, every hair on the back of his neck prickling, which means we wait for him. Dara crouched in the damp underbrush, her hand steadying the trembling boy who clutched her arm. His eyes were wide and glassy, more animal than child after days in captivity. Around him, 5 others huddled, thin and frightened, their breaths ragged as if the very air was trying to choke them. "We have to move them," Dara whispered, "now, before the traffickers return." Jack's jaw tightened. He glanced at Sasha, then at the crude bamboo cage behind them, already broken open. He could smell it. Fear, sweat, despair clinging to the air. "If he comes back and sees the children gone, he'll vanish," Jack said. "And if we stay, we risk them all being recaptured. Or worse," Dara shot back. "We can't gamble with children's lives, Jack. You know that." Sasha touched his arm, gentle, grounding. "She's right. We need to get them out of here." Dara's gaze lingered on the 2 of them, reading something unspoken between them. At last, she gave a sharp single nod. "Fine. I'll take them to the village. You wait. But if he's half as clever as the stories make him, he'll know someone's watching." Jack exhaled, a slow rumbling sound. "Sasha, you should go with Dara. Help her and get the children back safely. It'll take 2 of you to get the children through safely, and I'll stay here and watch for the tiger." Though Sasha protested, she agreed that Jack had the best chance of catching the Tiger King at his game. The children were gathered, soothed as best as Dara could manage. She carried the smallest one herself, a girl no older than 4, her hair matted with mud and leaves, and the others followed like a line of ducklings, their bare feet whispering across the damp earth, while Sasha brought up the rear. Jack watched them vanish into the mangroves, the forest swallowing them whole. He waited until even the sound of their steps had faded before he turned back to the watchtower. "It's time," he said softly to himself. The wolf was already stirring inside of him, anxious to be let loose. He let out a long breath and gave in. Bones shifted, muscles rippled, a sound like tearing fabric filled the grove. When it was done, a large gray wolf stood in his place, fur blending into the pale light of dusk. His paws dug into the damp soil. His nose flared, every scent exploding into clarity. Sweat, blood, tigers, crocodiles, and something else. Something human. He slipped into the trees near the entrance of the watchtower. Now, night in the Sundarbans was a living thing. The darkness clung to the mangroves like skin. The tide pulled at the roots, thick water glistening with starlight. Somewhere distant, a tiger roared, a guttural thunder that rattled the branches. Jack's ears twitched, his body still. His coat shimmered faintly as he crouched beside a low branch, his golden eyes scanning the shadows. From here, he could wait, he could watch, and be unseen. The forest hissed and groaned around him, alive with sound, and in that whispering dark, something moved. A figure, half shadow, half man, slipping through the mangroves. He carried a torch wrapped in a pitch-soaked cloth, its flame a sickly orange. His face was painted in streaks of black and orange stripes meant to mimic the tiger's fury. The Tiger King had returned. Jack's hackles rose, his lips curled back, silent but deadly, every nerve poised for the strike. "Wait," he told himself. "Let him get closer so he doesn't run." A sound to the left of Jack caught his attention, and he briefly glanced in that direction. From the mist rolling low over the water, a shape glided forward, silent and vast, White fur gleamed in the moonlight, silver and ghostly. The moon's tiger. Her eyes burned pale gold, fixed not on the man who moved ever closer, but directly on Jack. The world seemed to stand still, soundless, breathless. And in that very instant, Jack felt something, an echo in his blood, recognition that came from deep within. The wolf strained forward, not with hostility, but almost with reverence, kinship, a bond that he couldn't explain. The white tiger's gaze pierced him, burning into his soul before she turned and vanished into the mist. One moment she was there, radiant, and the very next she was gone. Her disappearance was sudden, unnatural. Jack blinked hard, heart pounding. His claws dug into the moist soil beneath him. And then realization struck. The Tiger King was gone, vanished as completely as the spectral white tigress. One moment the painted man had stood there, torch hissing. The next, the mangroves were empty, torchlight swallowed by the swamp. He swung his head around, desperately searching the darkness. The Tiger King, the moon's tiger, two predators, two myths. But were they one and the same? Were they working together as a team? The rest of the night Jack waited, crouched low in the crook of mangrove roots, the swamp rising and falling with the tide around his paws. The jungle breathed in damp, oppressive silence. Every insect hum, every ripple in the water made his hackles twitch. But neither tiger returned. Not the painted man with his burning torch and his predator's grin, not the special huntress whose pale fur had glowed like frost under the moonlight. Jack's eyes swept the black water until dawn began to thin the darkness. His muscles ached from holding still, but he didn't move. He couldn't. Not until he knew which one of them was hunting him, or if both were. By the time the first birds called, the swamp felt emptier than it had the night before, as though something vast and unseen had simply slipped back into shadow, content to wait. Jack remained still and patient, knowing that the game wasn't over, only paused. At first light, the mangrove shimmered with a thin veil of mist, and Jack caught the sound. Light footsteps, the careful breaking of reeds. He tensed until familiar scents cut through the damp. Sasha and Dara. He shifted back into human form, crouching in the roots, mud clinging to his hands and his arms. They emerged together, Sasha's hair tangled from the night, and Dara steady as ever, her eyes sharp despite the fatigue etched on her face. "The children are safe," Sasha said quickly, her voice low. "Bambibi was with us, I swear it. The forest opened a path and nothing touched us. We were out before the tide turned." Jack gave a short nod, relief swelling, but Dara's expression didn't soften. She looked as though she had carried something heavier than children back through the swamp. "We've uncovered something," she said, pulling a folded, mud-spotted folder from inside her tunic. She didn't hand it over, just stared at it like it was poison. "The traffickers aren't working alone. There's a front, a so-called charitable trust. Families in the villages borrow money for rice, medicine, even fishing nets. And when they can't repay..." Her gaze shifted towards the forest where the shadows still lingered. "They give their children instead, offerings to the Tiger King." Jack felt his stomach tighten, and Sasha's hand gripped his arm, cold and trembling. The painted man, the torch, the stripes. The fear wasn't just superstition. Someone had built a whole empire on it. "And it's spreading," Dara finished, her voice flat. "Other villages, other debts. This isn't just one trafficker hiding in the mangroves. It's a network, organized, funded, and these poor, desperate villagers are being manipulated even to believing that it's Dakan Rai's will." The forest suddenly felt heavier around them, as if even the roots and the vines recoiled from the truth. Jack's jaw was set. The children had been saved for now, but the Tiger King wasn't just a man in paint and fire. He was the mask of something larger, darker. And if they were going to stop him, they'd have to tear apart the trust itself, thread by thread. Dara crouched low, spreading the damp folder across a knot of mangrove roots. Jack leaned in, scanning the faded ink. Ledgers, names, amounts, numbers scrawled in uneven lines, tally marks beside each. Yeah, debt amounts, Tara said grimly, and repayments, or rather non-repayments. Look here. She tapped a name written in Bengali script. 3 children from one family, taken last month. Another 2 from this village here. She stabbed her finger at a cluster of names farther down. It's systematic. The trust pretends to help, then binds the families in chains that they can never break. And the Tiger King enforces the debt, Sasha added, her eyes narrowing. He isn't just a trafficker. He's their symbol, their weapon. Jack's fists curled against the bark. His wolf still hummed just beneath the surface, every instinct urging him to hunt, to tear, to end this nightmare in blood. I saw him. He was here last night, but just as quickly as he came, he disappeared. Dara's voice cut through the haze, sharp and deliberate. If he realizes that you're onto him, he'll vanish again. And worse, he'll take the children deeper. We can't afford to spook him. Now that we know this is where he holds them, I say we return to Kolkata and unravel this charitable trust. Sasha glanced at Jack, reading the fire in his eyes. We can't hunt him down recklessly. We have to build a trap. Otherwise, they'll just find someone else to pretend they're the Tiger King. The 3 of them fell silent, the dawn light filtering through the canopy, birds chattering as if mocking the gravity of their whispering plot. Dara broke the silence first. We have to expose the trust. We have to cut off its roots, its funding, and then the Tiger King will lose his power. If the villagers know what's being done to them, if they stop fearing the debts and the tigers, the whole network will crack. Yeah, but that takes time, Jack growled, and time means more children stolen. Dara didn't flinch. Then we split the fight. I'll move to the villages, work through the networks I know, spread word quietly, break the trust's hold. She looked directly at Jack. You and Sasha stay here and watch for him. And when he returns, when he slips back to claim his prey, watch where he goes. The plan hung between them, dangerous and fragile, but it was the only path forward. Sasha touched Jack's arm again, her voice soft but steady. Then we wait, like wolves, silent, patient, and when the tiger steps into the open, her eyes hardened. We track him. Jack gave a single, sharp nod. The forest rustled, a wind shifting through the mangroves as if the trees themselves listened. Somewhere distant, a tiger's roar echoed, low and haunting, carried across the dawn. And Jack wondered if it belonged to the beast of flesh or the ghostly tiger of the moon. Well, Dara had walked these villages before, but never with such weight in her chest. The mangroves had given way to stretches of flooded rice paddies, narrow paths winding between clusters of huts, patched with bamboo and tin. Life looked ordinary at first glance. Women pounding rice, men repairing nets, children chasing each other through the mud. But under it all, she felt the hush, the hesitation. She stopped at the edge of a tea stall, listening. 2 men sat on low stools, bent over steaming clay cups. Their voices were low, but the words were sharp. Took Rafik's boy last week. Said he hadn't paid the interest. The trust, again? Who else? They come with papers stamped and sealed like they're official. Who can fight papers? Dara's jaw tightened. She slipped into the shadows of the stall, ordered a cup of tea, and waited. The old tea seller gave her a wary glance. "You're not from here." "No," Dara admitted, her voice calm. "But I've seen what the trust does. I've seen where the children go." His hand faltered as he poured the tea, the steam curling between them. He lowered his voice to make sure no one else had heard. "Then you know about the men. They have power. They bring the tigers. Debt or no debt, when they come, no one dares resist." Dara leaned closer. "Can you tell me their names?" The old man shook his head quickly, fear written in every line of his face. "Names mean death. I cannot tell you names. The men come from Dhaka, from Kolkata. Men in suits, not just the ones in the forest. You don't understand. This isn't just one village. The trust owns half the Sundarbans." Her gut twisted. This was an empire, feeding on poverty, spreading its tendrils through loans, debts, and fear of beasts that stalked both in flesh and in story. She pressed coins into the tea seller's hand and rose. "Thank you. Please remember me. Remember my face. I am doing everything I can to stop this. I will come back to see you again, and I hope you will have more information for me then." That night, Dara found herself in the corner of a clay-walled hut. A mother sat before her, clutching a ragged shawl. Her eyes were red, her voice hoarse from weeping. "They came with a paper," the woman whispered. "Said my husband signed for money last year. He died in the forest. How could I repay?" Her body shook as she spoke with the next words. "They took my daughter. She was only 9. Dara's hand tightened around her knee, every muscle trembling with the urge to storm back into the mangroves and call Jack and Sasha down upon the Tiger King at that very moment. But she forced herself to breathe, to stay calm. "Do you still have the paper?" she asked. The woman nodded and drew out a crumpled sheet from beneath the bedding. Dara unfolded it, scanning the blocky print, the official-looking stamps. To most villagers it would look like law itself. To her eyes it was something different. Manufactured authority, forged signatures, and a trail that could be followed. "I will help you," Dara said softly. "This piece of paper is not the law. It's a trap, and we're going to break it." Outside, the forest whispered. Somewhere far away, a tiger roared again. And Dara spent the next 2 days moving from fishing village to hamlet, asking cautious questions, listening more than she spoke. At first, people shut their doors, muttering excuses, pretending not to understand her Bengali. But word began to spread. The foreign woman was not here to collect debts. She was here to listen. On the second evening, she sat cross-legged with a fisherman and his wife in the glow of a single kerosene lamp. The hut smelled of salt and drying fish, the air thick with desperation. "They call themselves a trust," the fisherman muttered, spitting the words as though it poisoned his tongue. "But they are only sharks in human skin. When the floods took my nets, they gave me money to replace them. Said it was a loan. Interest, small at first, and then it grew and grew, until I owed more than my catch for a year could cover." His wife, eyes rimmed red, added, "When we could not pay, they came at night, said they would take our daughter. We begged. We gave them our gold bangles. Still they came back. We prayed to Bambibi, but still they took her." Dara leaned forward. "These men, who do they serve? Who gives them the money to lend?" The fisherman hesitated. Then he reached under the matted floor and pulled out a folded pamphlet stamped with a foreign logo. Her stomach dropped. So many times she had heard the same story. Mahajan, informal lenders creating fake charities to defraud people. These scams typically exploit the legitimate public concern for child welfare or human aid, but they are usually not linked to a specific ongoing initiative. Many of these fake charities arise whenever there is an environmental disaster. Floods, tsunamis, earthquakes, fires. They use the money that kind people all across the world have donated, people who only wanted to help. And that is why it's so important to really scrutinize the charities that you donate to. Now later that night, Dara sat by the fire with Sasha and Jack. The paper trembled in her hands. "This isn't just traffickers," she said, her voice low. "It's a front. The money doesn't come from the jungle. It comes from banks, from donors. They've built a perfect system. Lend to the poor, set the terms so they cannot repay, and when the debt grows, they take what they want most, their children." Sasha's eyes darkened. "And no one questions it?" Dara shook her head. "No, they believe the brochures. They see smiling children in glossy photos. They read about schools being built. No one sees the ones who vanish." Her voice broke as she crumpled the pamphlet in her hand. "We're not just fighting traffickers, Sasha. We're fighting a machine. And somewhere above the Tiger King and his tigers, there's someone pulling the strings." That same night, under the cover of thick fog, Dara shadowed a group of men traveling upriver. They carried no nets, no tools of labor, only locked chests. She watched as they docked at a larger outpost, lit with lanterns and guarded by rifles, and a sleek black SUV waited at the shore. A man in a suit stepped out, not a villager, not a forest man. He shook hands with the leader of the debt collectors, then accepted a ledger from him with practiced ease. He signed, stamped, and handed over more envelopes of cash. Dara's blood went cold. This was no myth, no shadowy rumor. It was organized, funded, polished, hidden behind wealth and paperwork. And above it all, she could almost feel the Tiger King's unseen smile in the dark. Because while men in suits moved the money, he moved the terror. People, there's more to this, and this is the truth behind the story. In the Sundarbans, the story of inescapable debt is a very real issue. It is a cycle of financial dependence on moneylenders that affect nearly all agricultural and fishing families, all of them. See, families take loans for essential supplies like seeds, equipment, nets, boats, but they're trapped by high interest rates, binding sale contracts, and external factors like, natural disasters and conservation policies changing all the time. The debt is nearly impossible to repay and is passed down through generations. The debt trap is driven by a system where informal lenders, known as the Mohojan, provide these impoverished families with the credit they need to survive and work. Now, as a condition of the loan, they are required to sell their entire crop or their catch or their product to the same lender at a predetermined price, often half of which they could receive in the open market, ensuring that the loan's never really going to be repaid. And sadly, when a family defaults on a loan, they may be forced to give up their only assets, including their property, their home, or their children. Efforts by the government to curb these threats have done little to help, as these families remain trapped by the loan sharks.